Hello, everybody. It's Michelle Harden, the Brandmaster, and I'm excited to be with you again. Can you believe that we are ending yet another year? I'm grateful. I don't know about you guys, but I'm tremendously grateful to see all that God has done in this year. How many great things have happened through a lot of adversity, how the kingdom of God have really propelled and came forth and came through in so many different areas. I'm always bringing you great information, guests to help us to really understand where we are, in this pandemic, how to make the shift, how to make the pivot. And so I'm excited today. I have my newfound brother from North Carolina. Well, he's actually from Houston, Texas. He's still a Texan, but he lives now in North Carolina, where he is the senior pastor of City Church there. And I'm excited to have him on for me. So without any further delay, guys, help me welcome Dr. Michael Stevens. Dr. Stevens, how are you? How you doing?
I'm doing well tonight, Miss Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. It's a huge honor to be on with you tonight, and to all of my Houstonians and everyone in the region. Honored, delighted to be here, and looking forward to this conversation tonight.
Yeah, you're coming to Houston more often than regular now.
I do. It's been a long time waiting. I moved from Houston back in 1986, and would probably average back to Houston once a year, if not once every 2 years. But now it seems like it's once every month, if not once every other month. So, you know what? I'm home. I get all of my little eating spots and hang out in my little spots, and I'm just home again.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Stevens, for those who have not had the pleasure of meeting you personally, tell us a little bit about your backdrop. Who is Dr. Michael Stevens?
Well, again, thank you for asking and inquiring. Simple, country, Texan, swag. Moved to North Carolina, like I said, in 1986. Finished my last 2 years of high school. In fact, I went to church in Third Ward, Houston, Progressive New Hope Baptist Church under, at that time, the late N.S. Brown. Went to high school in Z.E. King out in the Sheldon area. Moved to North Carolina in 86. Met my wife at North Carolina A&T State University. Finished 4 years of college there. We got married, got saved in 1988, did ministry, college ministry, campus ministry, youth ministry, street ministry. And then in 94, we actually started a church in Charlotte, North Carolina, just she and I. And making a long story short, the church grew. It grew. The Lord blessed us. And we, like everyone else, we've been seeing the ups and downs, the ins and outs. But you know what? It's 2021. We're still here. We're still standing. God's been good to us. Got 3 adult kids. Wow. They're all phenomenal, doing some phenomenal things in their own space. And you know what? Like you said, I met you, your awesome husband, Randy, and just excited about the kingdom collaboration since the pandemic. You know, I'm still passionate, but like everyone else, we're passionate from home now. We're passionate from a laptop at the kitchen table, and I'm not flying nowhere, ain't got no appointments, ain't got no conferences to be at. So I got my consulting business, and I'm blessed to have 2 or 3 really great clients now. One of them we'll talk about tonight. So that's sort of what brings us here in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm glad you talked about these pain points. You being a pastor, these pain points that we've seen pastors experience during the pandemic. One of the challenges have been, where are we going to launch our services? How are we going to connect, to our congregation? How do we stay engaged and informed with those? Talk a little bit about some of your experiences, and then those pastors, what was the difficult times during the pandemic and even now?
Well, when I do these workshops and seminars and conferences all over the country, Michelle, once again, I think I average now probably, I'm thinking about 7, 8 presentations a week, some virtual, some in person. I can't count the number of cities, states I've been in the last probably 60 days. 3 things keep surfacing up from every single pastor, including mine, our church. And the pain points, number one, are lack of connection. Since the pandemic began 2 years ago, people don't feel connected. Pastors don't feel like their members are connected to each other. They don't feel that they're connected to the clergy and the leadership. And so it was one thing for people to be spread out all over the geographical space, but now people are spread out all over social media. We've got 1 million Facebook Live broadcasts. You've got 1 million YouTube Live videos, and people are hearing sermons everywhere now. So people don't feel connected. Number 2 pain point is is communication, mass communication. How do you communicate in this pandemic? People in shutdown mode, people quarantine, people are not coming to church. The statistics. You're brilliant, you're smart, you're on top, on the bleeding edge of technology and the stats. And, on average, 40%. 45% right now of people don't go to church, are not going back to church,
Yes.
don't volunteer, membership is down, and all that equates to finances and money being down. And so at the end of the day, how do you communicate? And so, we're going to talk in a moment about just the value and the power of this thing right here called the cell phone. And, what used to be hot, the websites and, all of that 15 years ago, 10 years ago, now that's an ancient printing press of old days. Now it's all about the phone. Yes. And again, we're getting at a moment. And pain point number 3 is finances. Like I said, when 40% of people are gone, 40% of people are not coming to church, not volunteering, not joining, that equates to 40% of income. But yet those mortgages are there, the payroll is there, the utilities are there, and we got to find a way to create income. So I think this app and I think that technology speaks to these things in a very relevant and a really real way.
Awesome. When we connected and we met, we started to talk about some of these challenges too, which brought us to the Pastor Solution Network. And that's something that I'm very excited about, because in talking with a lot of pastors, what we're finding is not just the communication, financing, but even structure, infrastructure, finding a church building, strategy for their leaders. That they had some voids there. Even as we pivot into the digital space, how do we train our leaders? How do we still provide these type of trainings? Well, there's technology again that allows us to do that. And so we formed this meetup, if you will, for pastors.
Sure.
Pastor Solution Network that will be getting together on January the 20th, 2022. Now that sounds very strange saying that. January 20th,
it does.
2022. And it's going to be at the Houston Baptist University, and it's free, right? And it's where pastors will have an opportunity to come out and to meet you, to hear from you, some dynamic things, because I do want, before we go to that app, I want to talk to you even about your passion, your love for Israel, your depth for education, as relates, because I don't want people to get this misconception that we're just here talking, that you're here talking about an app. You come from a wealth of information and academia, right? From Oral Roberts University, being a adjunct professor. So this is more than just talking about something that is in the now. This is something that is going to be here forever. And so through your research and through your connections and your depth of education, I want you to speak to both of those things. Talk a little bit about the educational piece, PSN, and then go right into the app.
Well, you know what? And first of all, thank you for that perspective, because it takes the salesiness away from this one-dimensional conversation about the app. I can talk about the app all day long, because I believe it's real, it's relevant, it's right now, and it's all that and more. But thank you for the comprehensive perspective. I believe this, that if there's ever been a time for leadership in the pulpit, now's the time. If there's ever been a time for pastors to be courageous, to have conviction, and to lead, particularly in the Black community, now's the time. We don't have the fortunes that our parents and grandparents had in the 60s and 70s. There's no more Martin Luther King. There's no more, unfortunately, men, women who, brazenly stood in the pulpits across America and galvanized and became the bedrock of Black communities. Now, again, we got social media, multimedia, print media, we're all over the place. And truthfully, we don't have that centric nucleus of leadership anymore. So with that being said, as much as that's a problem, it's actually also an opportunity for men and women. Look at what you're doing in Houston. This network is absolutely a game changer. And you know what? You're to be commended, because most major cities, we don't have networks. Charlotte, unfortunately, particularly in the Black community, we don't have that. And I hate to put my city on blast here, but we've
Yeah.
got so much cat fighting and clawing and scratching and competing and territorialism. And unfortunately, you see that in major cities,
Yes.
denominational, whose church is the biggest, whose choir is the baddest. Well, you know what? The pandemic sort of humbled everybody. The
Everybody.
pandemic kind
Everybody.
of it leveled the playing field. And so it's no more about the big guys and little U's. So from an academic perspective, you're correct. I did both my master's degree and my doctorate at Oral Roberts University. Speaking of Israel, my wife and I went to Israel for the first time as grad students. Didn't think nothing of it other than, like most people, somewhere we wanted to go as Christians. It was an opportunity to go. We went. Didn't really think anything of it. It was all that and more. But then God spoke to my heart years later and said, son, I want you and I want your church to be a blessing to Israel. Problem was, I didn't know anyone Jewish. I knew nothing about a synagogue. I knew nothing about a Jewish federation. But it would just so happen to be about a few weeks later. And by the way, we had told our church this that Sunday. I'll never forget that Sunday morning. We had 3 morning services, 8, 9:30, and 11. 3 morning services. Our sanctuary seated 500 at that time. They were all full. And I said, you know what? God wants our Black Pentecostal Church of God in Christ Church to bless Israel. See how quiet you are right now? That's how quiet they was when I said. But everybody like, yeah, but how? When?
Oh,
A few
yeah.
weeks later, believe it or not, Pastor John Hagee, true story, was at our Kojic convocation in Memphis,
Wow.
Tennessee. Now, can you imagine that little 4'5", 500-pound John Hagee? And I love that old man. God knows I learned a lot from him. He is at our Holy Ghost, the only white thing in the room, right? He's at our Holy Ghost Kojic convocation. And I met him there through a mutual friend. He said, I want you to travel Israel with me. I went to Israel for the second time. And you know what? The rest was history. I've been to Israel now 20-something different times. I actually would start doing consulting and doing some work for him, became the outreach coordinator for the African-American community. I've probably seen 300-400 African-American pastors, preachers, leaders go to Israel because of that relationship.
Wow.
Although I no longer, Michelle, work for Pastor Hagen, I no longer work for Kufi. I think they took a very aggressive sort of a political move. And, it's understandable. Those things happen. But I'm blessed today to be back in that pro-Israel advocacy, doing work now with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. So all that being said, pastors have to be networked. Pastors have to be resourced. And what your network brings, the Pastors Solutions Network, what it brings to the table is a ecumenical, non-competitive, no sizing up, no jockeying, no denominational territorialism. You know what? If someone's in the tech area, bring them in. Someone's in the construction area, bring them in. Someone's in the finance area, bring them in. We need to get pastors and church leaders to a point and to a space where they can learn and grow without fear of reprisal, without fear of intimidation. And that's what you bring to the table. I pray, my prayer is that it is duplicated and franchised all over the country.
I receive it. And we doing this together, right?
Yes, ma'am. You better believe it.
Listen, I'm just put you on blast. It's so neat. It's time for the kingdom to come together and really advance. We should be forerunners. We are forerunners in this world. And so, I'm excited about the opportunities that we have. Let's dive into this app, In Peace. Our sponsor for our first PSN workshop. Tell us a little bit about In Peace, and then tell us the functionality of this app.
At the end of the day, In Peace is nothing new on the global stage. In Peace is a company based out of Brazil. They've got 6,000 apps around the world, Asia, South America, more dominant, and even Europe. Unfortunately, In Peace was not in the United States of America in the English-speaking space. So the company that I do consulting for in South Florida, they saw an opportunity to buy the North American rights to In Peace a few months ago. So the owners, they wrote a big check and they bought the North America rights to bring this highly innovative and beautiful, attractive, 100% customizable app to the United States of America. And that's, it seems like long and short, but that was probably like 2.5 months ago. And it has taken off like wildfire. I'm tired tonight because I've been doing presentations for the last several weeks, literally almost on a daily basis. I don't have put like this. I need 10 of me right now, in particular for the African-American community. We have space in the Latino, Hispanic community. And it's just a beautiful thing because, again, the pandemic created an essential need.
Yes.
And, we've all had an app before. I think every pastor would admit I probably had an app before at some time or the other, but it was a trophy. It was eye candy. It was a toy to kind of show our friends in these conventions and convocations. Look how pretty my little church is. But that's all it did. It was not functional. It was not practical, and there was no essential need. But because of the pandemic, we must stream now. And we can't depend, by the way, on Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and YouTube Live. We directly stream from the app. We need that social media. We need push notifications. We need to make sure that in the palm of our hand, everything we need is in the palm of our hand. Giving, our prayer wall. The functionality is you literally not just can sustain. I'm going to pull it up here. Not only can you sustain your church with this app, you can build a church with this app. You can succeed with this app
because all virtual.
It's all virtual. Your social media, your multimedia, your events planning, your prayer wall, the map, how to get to your church, your sermon notes, your YouTube archive videos. MP's Play is basically what every pastor knows as the product table. So there's no more cassette tapes for $5, CDs for $7, and DVDs for $9. Everything now is digital content that you can sell. Michelle, you and I haven't talked since this, but I was in New York this past week and did 4 presentations in New York, and I've already got invitations to come back to different denominational backgrounds, presentations. One guy said, "Listen, why don't you just simply have?" Watch this. Why don't you simply have a what do we call it? A business owners feature? Have a feature just for business owners and call it a church directory for business owners. Let them pay $5 a month, $10 a month. Whatever, you just subsidize and monetize your app. If I've got 10 business owners and for $5 a month, right? We're gonna drop a hyperlink, your business or real estate agent or insurance agent, what have you. Well, that's $50 a month. Yeah, now it's covered, right? If I charge $10 a month, now I made some money. And so functionality and the creativity is limitless. And I say all that to say this: there's a legitimate need for essentiality with this app. I don't know how you're going to sustain and build without maximizing the virtual space.
Yeah, you won't be able to sustain because the rapid growth of, even individuals who go looking for social media. What I've heard is that one person can go to 10 churches in just a matter of minutes because of the browser. They can go, and if you're not immediately connecting with them, not just in that moment, but what do you have to offer them? And one of the features that you showed me that literally blew my mind and had Apostle Walker turning flips was those sermon notes. Sermon notes. Give us just a description of how pastors can use these sermon notes for evangelism.
Yeah, and I know I know they won't be able to see my sermon notes as crystal clear here, but with sermon notes here,
we see it great.
These are all my sermon notes, and I can just drop a quick picture on cut and paste for the little video background. But let's say I hit brokenness, God's promotion for prosperity. There's my sermon, there's my scriptures, there's our 3 points in the song and all that good stuff. And but the beautiful thing about your sermon notes, Michelle, is that you can hit that purple button right there. And once I hit the purple button, guess what happens? I can text it, I can email it, I can drop it on Facebook, I can drop it on Twitter. And so the goal now is people, again, let's go back to connectivity. People want to feel connected. Pastors want their members. I don't want them, and I hate to say this, but I don't want them reading Bishop so-and-so's sermon and then they got to go to Evangelist so-and-so's sermon. No, I want them to stay under the cloud of what God is speaking in our local church. So now I'm going to send them out my printed sermon notes. And not only for the membership, but every member has a cousin, a coworker, a friend, somebody who knows somebody who has no church home. Send them the sermon on how to survive in pandemic days, how to have courage in weak need moments, or whatever it might be. How to be strong in such terrible times, whatever that sermon encouragement word is. And that, as you said, is evangelism 101. Challenge 100 people to send this sermon, printed sermon, to 3 people that they know that needed a word on healing in this pandemic. That's 300 people. That's going to get that sermon note and read it. And again, it keeps the flock together on the same page at the same time.
And now we're reaching the now generation, because the now generation are researchers. They want to know what you said. And sometimes in church, when
Absolutely.
you have the emotion of things going on, you may be in church and someone hit the word hit someone in a certain way, and they yeah, and you miss that point. Now you can go back and you can say, what did he say? Okay, let me go and research this for myself.
You better
We're
believe
in
it.
that
Absolutely.
generation where our children and that whole generation, that new generation, millennials, they want to read it. They want to see what you're saying. They want to understand what you're saying and study it and do the due diligence for themselves. So this is also a great way to be able to share that with our next generation and our now generation. I'm excited about the app. I love the fact that the app was built from a place of not just a financial motivation,
Sure.
to make money. It was built because there was a need in the church for us to answer this solution, answer this problem. And the problem being the connectivity, the resources, and all of that. And if we're going to compete in the AI, if we're going to compete with the artificial intelligence, which we're still way behind, then this is one of the greatest steps that I see that's
Absolutely.
happening now to help us to get there.
Sure. Sure.
Any closing words for you?
You know what? I want to say two things real quick. And, of course, that was one of many, many features. And
Sure.
people want to know, is there anything better than those sermon notes? Well, the sermon and the experience of the service itself. Just as we send those sermon notes out, you got another feature called YouTube videos. You
Yes.
send the whole video of the service itself out. Again, from an evangelistic point of view, can you imagine encouraging 200 people, 100 who was in church and 100 folk who watched it online? There was such a glorious, powerful move of God's service. You would encourage 200 people to send with an email, text message, send it to 3 people that you know. That's 600 households, 600 families, 600 people who are going to experience the power of God that failed, that moved, that ministered. And again, speaking of evangelism, if you're going to sustain, you're going to survive, you're going to grow, it's this type of high-tech technology. Again, not just sustaining the church, you want to succeed and stay on the cutting edge, the bleeding edge, as we call it, when it comes to being high touch, but also high tech. You know what, Michelle, I'd be a bad person if I didn't say this. We're so proud of Fountain of Praise. I got to do Fountain of Praise. 2 reasons why.
Yes.
Someone would say, church that big, that successful, they don't need an app like this. They already got it going on. Mm-hmm. But what did Jesus remind us? To he who has, more shall be given. To he who doesn't, that still a little bit should be taken away. Mm-hmm. I say that to say this, they ain't paying no more or no less than the average church that has 25 members. The reality is, for those who have a heart for discipleship, they take advantage of opportunities like these to go forward. Your Pastor Solutions Network, it is a absolute phenomenal game changer. It's an essential must. If I lived in Houston, and you know what, I don't have to live in Houston, even though I'm in Charlotte, I am a virtual member. And I'm excited about it coming to my city, my state. We got folk in Atlanta who need this. We know folk all over the country who need this network. So I just say to everyone in the Houston area, quit tripping, get off the bench, come out of the sideline, come out of the press box, come out of the grandstand, get on the field and be active in 2022, and let the Lord bless you.
All right. One other feature I'm going to pull is small groups. Small groups.
Yeah. Small groups. What I failed to mention is this app was created by pastors for pastors. This pastor, in fact, the owner and designer, his name, he's a 4th generational pastor. His whole goal was that people receive Jesus Christ through this app. And again, this is well before the pandemic. It had nothing to do with the pandemic, but now because of the pandemic, can you imagine just prophetically how the Lord put this in place? Small groups are important. And whether you come from a G12 model, an affinity group model, a cell group model, even a traditional Kojic or Baptist or PAW, we all have some type of small group setup. The beautiful thing about small groups on this app is it's autonomous. In other words, you can adapt it. You can create the structure in the system to adapt to whatever current small group system you have in your church. Maybe you don't have a small group system. Well, you know what? No need to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. It will give you a template how to create a virtual small group structure. Wow. Again, in this pandemic, all you have to do is follow the instructions, build your ministry, grow your small groups. And here's the beautiful thing. You can actually have small group leaders, small group regional leaders, small group volunteer leaders, and they may never visit your church in Houston. Why? These might be virtual members. They're going to tithe. They're going to give. They're going to be willing to go through your new members classes, your new believers classes. They may get communion and get baptized in a bathtub. I don't know. Whatever it happens, they can be discipled literally at virtual. Now, again, we all want to touch people. We want people in our physical, framework. But in this virtual space, why would we shut the door of virtual possibilities of people being discipled in birth and sired because of your ministry now that these doors are opening?
Well, you heard it from our guest today, Dr. Michael Stevens. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of Live Life and just Live Life Full. And we're just excited about the PSN network, about the network that's here, that we have an opportunity to gather pastors together for this conversation of what do you need?
Sure.
That's the question. What do you need? Because what ultimately happens is that it's somebody in the room that has what you need. Come out and meet Dr. Michael Stevens, meet also Bishop Titus Stewart, and also James Jacobs. Myself will be there to help answer your questions. We have many more things planned for 2022, but let's start with January the 20th, 10 a.m. Meet us at Houston Baptist University in the Hinton building. Guys, come to the Dillon room and you'll be able to meet all of us there. But go ahead and register. I think it's very important that you get your name on the list because it does ask you some questions. And so some of those questions we can go ahead and entertain prior to you getting there. So thank you, Dr. Stevens, for being with me on today. And we look forward to seeing your visit back in Houston on January the 20th. Guys, go out and have an amazing, amazing day.